Now to the assembly race here in the North Country. The incumbent, Billy Jones, is seeking a fourth term representing the 115th Assembly District that was redrawn as part of redistricting. Along with Clinton and Franklin counties, the 115th will now include 5 towns in Essex County, including Lake Placid and Keene. Billy Jones is being challenged by a political newcomer, Stephen Chilton, a Republican from Ellenburg Center, New York. And joining us now is Billy Jones from Chateaugay Lake, a Democrat seeking a fourth term now, representing the 115th District in the New York State Assembly. Welcome.
Good to be here.
We always start out with the incumbents and ask them about what they're proud of, that they've accomplished, why voters should re-elect them.
Well, I'm most proud of what we've been able to do as a team in constituent services, Tom. Every day we have people calling my office, getting emails in from people that are having difficulty in their daily lives, right? And that's what my team does. They answer their questions. They help them deal with state bureaucracies, whatever that may be. Small business, we do a ton of work with small business to help them guide through some of the bureaucracy that they're dealing with. And I always tell my team, and they know it, on any particular day, someone will call the office, and at that moment, that is the most important thing in their lives. And to us, it might be the 10th call of the day, the 20th call of the day, but we always put priority and always remember that at that moment, that could be the most important issue and is the most important thing that they're dealing with in their lives. Proud of the stuff we have done for seniors. Senior Planet is a proud project of mine. That I have been able to fund in the state budget. We've also helped with farmers. Northern New York Ag Development Program is very important. We're able to fund that. But I think what I'm most proud of is what we do on a daily basis. We talk to people, we deal with their issues day in and day out.
The Democrats have controlled the Assembly for more than a quarter of a century now, and that likely won't be changing. How does being a member of the majority help you and help the constituents here in the 115?
I've never been a partisan. I've always worked in a bipartisan way. I don't deal with the bickering. And certainly, I think it is an advantage to the people here that I am able to get resources for non-for-profits, for small governments, for businesses here. That can be an advantage, but I've never gotten into the partisan bickering. I just haven't. It's not been my style. It won't be my style. We continue to work for the people, no matter you're conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican, independents, blanks. We continue to do the job for the people here in the North Country.
What has the Democratic majority in the Assembly gotten wrong? What are some examples of either budget items or legislation that they've passed that you think are out of step with the constituents here in the North Country?
Certainly I've spoken about that. I mean, we can talk about various legislation, talk about bail and a few other issues that I have gone against my colleagues from down in New York on.
Let's do that. Why don't we start right with that? The
Sure.
new gun law passed this summer by the legislature in a special session after the Supreme Court struck down the state's concealed carry law. A lot of people, Republicans certainly in the legislature, have serious issues with many of the provisions in the law, and you have as well.
Yes, and many of my upstate colleagues in the Democrat majority have as well. I just felt this law pinpointed law-abiding citizens, and you hear that a lot, right? Law-abiding citizens, law-abiding citizens. I don't think it does anything to curtail the use of illegal guns, the crime that we're experiencing in certain areas in our state. I don't think it does anything to that, but put a mandate and a burden on our citizens here. And we have a lot of citizens that have, pistol permit carry, concealed carry. A lot more than you would think. I've learned that. I've learned that in the past several months.
Certainly, people up here were quite upset about the so-called sensitive areas and whether or not that included the entire Adirondack Park, which was open to interpretation. And that was a huge concern of yours.
Absolutely, and we were at the forefront of that, dealing with that issue, dealing with it head on, actually, getting together with local governments and the Adirondack agencies to make sure that we had clarification in the law. We still don't have complete clarification on that, but we were able to get a listing of where they could in the forest preserve, where they could carry in the Adirondacks. We have to change that in law, in statute. You need that change in statute. We're working on that. Certainly, worked with reenactors here, battle on the eve of the Battle of Plattsburgh, literally on the eve of the Battle of Plattsburgh, helping them be able to carry through with their ceremonies, with their reenactments, and they were very grateful for it. And we got clarification there. Still needs to be fixed in the law. We're continuing to work on it. Also, police and military funerals, working on that. I have co-sponsored legislation on that to get that through to help our veterans continue those services.
And if lawmakers go back to fix it, what else would you like to see change? What else about what other provisions in it concern you?
Well, I think a lot of the sensitive areas. There's other issues in there that we need to work on.
Another issue that's been pretty contentious for the past few years is bail reform. You mentioned that. Did those reforms that were enacted in 2019 that eliminated cash bail for most misdemeanor and nonviolent felony charges go too far? Were they a mistake?
Absolutely. Yes.
Fixes were made in 2020, but enough fixes, or do you need to go back and revisit it again?
Actually, fixes were made in 2021, 2022.
So 2 sessions?
2 sessions, fixes were made. We need to go back and further clarify. What I would like to see, Tom, is honestly bringing everybody in the room in a collaborative effort. DAs, law enforcement, people, advocates for this law. Bring them in a room so we can work on this together. We need all voices in the room so that we can correct this and fix it. You have to bring the people that are going to be affected the most by these changes in the law enforcement, judges, and other agencies to make sure, and DAs, to make sure that we get this thing right.
The Supreme Court this summer overturned Roe v. Wade. Abortion remains legal in New York State, and Governor Hochul has committed $35 million to expand capacity to cover abortion procedures for women who live in New York State, and also to cover expenses for out-of-state women who come to New York from states where abortion is now severely restricted or illegal. Should taxpayer dollars be used for abortion services for women from other states?
I think that should have gone through a legislative process. I would have liked to have seen that. But I'm pro-choice. I make no bones about it. And certainly we need to make access to reproductive rights for women, for families, continue to do that here in New York. I would also say that this leads into something else. You talked about Roe v. Wade, the right to privacy, the right to marriage, the right to all these things. They've opened up a Pandora's box in this. We have to be very vigilant on this here in New York, and I think that should scare everyone, not just Democrats, independents. I think it should scare Republicans and also conservatives. Look up right to privacy. Look up some of these things that the Supreme Court and that the government wants to get their nose into your private life. Your private life. We need to seriously push back on this, and we need to take a look at it.
And will you vote to pass the Equal Rights Amendment that would incorporate the right to an abortion and access to contraception in New York's Constitution?
I voted once for it, yes, and I will vote for it again.
And then it will go to voters after that?
Yes, it will. What I like about that also is it's a referendum. It goes to the voters for a choice.
Last month, the administration okayed a plan to lower the farm worker overtime threshold to 40 hours per week over the next 10 years. Farmers say it'll raise costs and potentially drive their farm laborers to other states. Governor Hochul and advocacy groups say that the farm workers should be granted the same rights as other workers in New York, and says a new tax credit enacted in this year's budget will cover the cost of overtime for farmers. Do you disagree with the governor on that?
What I would have liked to have seen, and I've spoken out on this issue many, many times, flexibility in the law. The law went through, right? And then it went to a wage board with 3 people deciding. We should never legislate away our authority to give it to a board, to give it to any board. And that's where the threshold was at 60, and then it got lowered. We were dealing with a moving target here. You know how I feel about this? I feel farming is a unique business, a unique industry. I've talked to farm workers on it. I've talked to farmers. I grew up on a farm, a dairy farm, my whole entire life. They got this one wrong. We have such a small growing season that we need flexibility with those hours in the way that our farmers and farm workers are able to do that. It just, we missed the mark on this. We got it wrong, and if there's any way, we need to correct it.
The number of inmates incarcerated in state prisons is half of what it was 20 years ago. Over the past several years, dozens of facilities have been closed. The governor has had that authority to do that, including the Clinton Annex in the 115th District a little more than a year ago, Mariah Shock in neighboring Essex County. Prisons are major employers, as you well know, in the North Country. But can you say no to consolidating the prison system with such a steep decline in the prison population?
I think I can say no to it, and I think I will say no to it. I've authored several bills for prison safety, keeping people in those facilities safe, keeping our correction officers and our civilians safe within those facilities. And I think anytime you get to overcrowding too much does not do that. I authored a bill, the double bunking bill, which was passed and signed into law to do that. And we just came through a major pandemic where being in close quarters together, as we all know, contributed to further spreading of this virus, of this disease. Yes, we should be able to make it safe inside our correctional facilities, and I don't think further consolidating them does that.
And this has been discussed for years, as you well know. Once a facility is closed, does the state have an obligation to find a new use for that prison to help the community that has counted on those jobs?
Absolutely. We have dormant facilities through the North Country. Even before I got into this position, there were 3 closed in my district. And you just look at them and it makes you wonder, why isn't the state doing something? We push agencies, OGS, other agencies, docs, to find repurposes, uses for it. ESD, there's a committee now that was created to help do that. But yes, we have an obligation. I actually have legislation behind that any state facility, whether it be docs or DEC or any of these facilities, that they must go through steps to find and work with other agencies to find repurposing of those facilities.
There's a housing crisis here in the North Country. Many locals looking to buy a home are being priced out of the market. Increases in rent are outpacing those for income. With inflation, mortgage rates are soaring. There are new affordable housing projects. Harrison Place in Malone and Northwoods in Plattsburgh are being built with the backing of millions of dollars in state funding. Are there enough of these affordable housing projects to help? And what is the state's obligation to make sure that residents have homes? What more should the state be doing?
Tom, we're looking at 2 issues here, right? We're looking at affordable housing, which often gets lumped into, helping our lower income residents, which I am for, but also housing affordability. I'm traveling my district and we're seeing more and more of it. The new district in the Adirondacks, huge issue, housing affordability.
In the Tri-Lakes, you have 5 towns now that will be part of the 115th District. Yes. In Essex County.
Yes, and I've traveled them extensively, talked to people, talked to businesses, talked to residents at large. The number one issue right now, obviously inflation, but along with that goes with housing affordability.
Because they need housing for healthcare workers, educators, for their workers.
Absolutely. People are being priced out of their homes and they're not being able to get workers in.
National Grid is predicting a nearly 40% increase in energy costs this winter. Congress has passed an additional $1 billion in emergency supplemental low-income home energy assistance. About $60 million of that will come to New York State. What additional steps do you support the state taking to lower heating and electric costs?
Well, I have proposed the middle-income energy assistance program for our middle-class residents. Listen, it might be nice out today. We're at the end of October here, but we're coming into a winter season, and I have received many phone calls, talked to many residents about it. Well, they're scared. They really are. We're having energy costs, home heating costs that will double, triple, and quadruple in some cases, and our families quite simply can't afford it. So I've proposed this legislation, the Middle Income Energy Assistance Program. We need to expand HEAP to help our seniors and people on fixed incomes, but we also have that just above that threshold, those people that quite frankly, aren't going to be able to heat their homes and live their daily lives. So we're proposing a fund to do that.
The Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act asked New Yorkers this November to approve borrowing up to $4.2 billion more than $1 billion for climate restoration and flood risk reduction, $1.5 billion for climate change mitigation, $650 million for open space land conservation, another $650 million for water quality improvement. Do you support the Bond Act question?
The Bond Act, yes, I voted for it. I like that it's going to a referendum. It's going to the people to vote on. What we find in this package, though, is we need to help our small municipalities, our small water districts, our small wastewater districts, the rural ones that can't quite afford it. We need assistance in there for them. We can't put it on the backs of local people. Some of these wastewater districts, some of these water districts, I mean, we have a couple hundred people in there, and they're being asked by the state of New York to fund $5, $10, $15 million projects. We need that funding to help those people so that their fees and their water rates don't go sky high.
Billy Jones, thanks a lot for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.